Ready.
All right, I have a few minutes past 6 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Before we stand, I have a few things that I want to say with the agenda. I want to reflect that Sarah Stevens-Cruff has asked to speak this evening. It's not on the agenda, but that was pre-approved. I also wanted to let the council know, if you are so inclined, that Renee Smith has asked for an executive session for the last thing on our agenda, which is confidential business information of an applicant for economic development. I also tonight will not be doing the discussion prompting for every question, but I will pause. So if you would like to discuss, I did it the last time kind of as like a informal type of training thing, but I don't think it's necessary, but know that you can discuss anything. And then before we get to the moment of silence, I was just informed that Georgie Widmer had passed away. And I know some of you will talk a little bit more about that, but she was an assistant in my kindergarten classroom when I was a student. And when I came on council, she was probably one of the most gracious mentors and colleagues of mine on city council for several years. So we should try to remember and reflect on her throughout the evening as well, because she sat in these chambers for a very long time for service to Fostoria. So with that, we will start with a moment of silence, or with an invocation by Mr. Podak.
Bow your heads. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for people who have guided us and been our mentors in the past. And we thank you for our mentors and our people who give us guidance today. And above all, you are the ultimate guidance. We thank you for all of the things that we do for other people in this chamber. In Jesus' name. Amen.
If you could turn and face the flag, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Roll call of the council members.
Lehman. Here. Podak.
Here.
Cassidy.
Here.
Baker.
Here.
Hall.
Here.
Mendoza.
Here.
Lake.
A move to excuse Councilperson Lake.
Second.
We have a motion by Mendoza and a second by Cassidy to excuse Councilperson Lake this evening. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman.
Yes.
Podak.
Yes.
Cassidy.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
That does carry. Minutes of the previous meeting. I do want to note that the paper copy you have in front of you does not have the new business that was passed on it, but your digital copy does have the information. So your minutes won't show 3 of the ordinances that we passed last time in this packet.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Lehman, a second by Mendoza to approve the minutes. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman.
Yes.
Podak.
Yes.
Cassidy.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
They do pass. Communications.
I do have a hearing notice from Liquor Control. And it is for AL Post 0073 Earl Faust, doing business as Al Post 73 Earl Faust. Whether or not council wants to hold a hearing for a liquor license.
Anyone feel the need to hold a hearing for that liquor license? Guess not.
Okay,
Any other communications?
that is all I have.
All right, we'll go into committee reports. Finance Committee.
Finance Committee met just this evening. Had a presentation from Mr. Dandurand. He updated us on the items that will need emergency passage today, and we reviewed the financials from February. He denoted that there was we're seeing an increase in income tax, but it's not been long enough that he sees that as a trend. So that's just something that he'll watch going forward.
Thank you. Public Affairs Committee.
I am happy to report that there are quite a few events happening here in Fostoria in the upcoming days. First, the City of Fostoria is hosting its annual Easter egg scramble at Fostoria Elementary School this Saturday, March 23rd from 10:30 to noon. The scramble will begin promptly at 11 a.m. There will be crafts and other activities, so be sure to bring your camera to take photos with the Easter Bunny. Also, Calico Charlie's Story Time Humpty Dumpty and Little Lumpty is happening this Saturday, March 23rd at 2 p.m. at Calico Charlie's on Main Street. Next, St. Catherine's Manor of Fostoria is hosting an Easter egg hunt this Sunday, March 24th at 1:30 in the afternoon for children aged 10 and younger. And finally, TCB Easter Extravaganza will take place at Foundation Park next Saturday, March 30th from 10 to 4. There will be games, food, and a scavenger hunt. Portions of all the money raised will be donated to the Fostoria Sharing Kitchen. Please register through the link provided on the Chamber's website. That is all.
Law and Ordinance Committee.
The Law and Ordinance Committee met this evening, and as a result, we will be asking that council approve our motion to table the ordinance to amend the traffic control map when so moved to allow additional time for consideration and to seek more information. We will also be preparing a proposal to amend Chapter 1355 to utilize the most up-to-date International Property Maintenance Code in the near future as well. Currently reference a 2009 version. Deb Tyson spoke about ideas to get more citizens involved with volunteerism. And the Law and Ordinance Committee will meet again on Tuesday, April 2nd at 5:15 here in council chambers.
Thank you very much. Moving into report of the officers, Mr. Mayor.
I would like to request that the first two items under new business, the bidding for the splash pad and the pickleball court, be passed as emergency measures. While I was well aware that these projects were coming, I was not aware that the engineering firms creating the drawings and requirements for these projects have already released the bids. Bids are due prior to our next council meeting. Also, during miscellaneous business, I will have an appointment to make.
Thank you. Safety Service Director, Mr. Keckler.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, it's not on your agenda tonight, but last year we started working on revamping the Tree and Beautification Committee ordinance and their duties. So we put a lot of work into that, and the committee met today and approved the new ordinance that will come out. And Don had done a lot of work on making that work in anticipation of the arborist grant and the arborist coming on board. There's some things in there that puts a lot of the things that were duties of the tree commission on to employees of the city and the administration. So that will be coming in the first council meeting in April. And as Brian had mentioned, it came to my attention earlier today that Georgie had passed away at the age of 84. 37 years as a teacher in the community, and didn't stop after that. I was lucky enough to see her in action through the Arts Council and working with the kids, especially like at the Easter egg scramble and some things like that, and a lot of interaction with her through the Women's Club. And I was lucky enough to have her on board City Council when I started my journey as mayor, and I was happy to have been in her circle and consider her a friend and just a lovely lady. Her visitation will be next Tuesday, the 26th, at Harold Floriana from 1 to 7. And then the Mass of Christian Burial on Wednesday, I think at 10:30 at the church. So didn't want this day to pass without mentioning Georgie and the importance of her in this community, from teaching kids to teaching me. I was not a student of hers, but was a student of hers when I came on board. So was happy to have known her. So thank you.
Director of Law.
Thank you. I do have a couple things in the old business. As I mentioned, I sent out an email for the landlord and tenants' rights. There were various versions sent out. So there were some fixes made in one version and then fixes made. And so I just made sure that we had the right one with all of the fixes in one document. So if I could get a motion to amend at the appropriate time just to reflect the changes in that most recent version that I sent out to you guys last week. You have seen that before, but like I said, some changes were in one version, some were in another. So it shouldn't be anything new to you, but if you have questions.
Fine.
Then, Amy, I did some math and some looking at the calendar, and you are correct. We do need to pass that DORA legislation as an emergency so that it would be effective immediately as opposed to waiting the 30 days if we passed it after 3. So at least this way we got 2 readings in, but we will need to pass that as emergency tonight in order for it to actually be effective. Then in the new business, I'm sure Steve talked about it in the finance committee about the tax incentive review council legislation that will need to be passed as an emergency tonight. I'm not sure if Steve mentioned that's always going to be an emergency because that committee meets in March and then the deadline's in March. So that's always going to be an emergency. So we will need that passed as an emergency tonight. And that's all I have unless there are questions. I know there's a lot of new business tonight.
I have a point of clarification. On the ordinance for landlord and tenant rights, does
Yes.
that amendment need to be made before it's read, or can it be made after it's read?
It can be made, well, Tammy can read it, motion to amend, go through all of that, and then motion to approve as amended.
Okay, thank you. All righty. And Director of Finance.
I left in front of you on the desk a piece from Red Tree Investments. We did move $2 million from our Star Ohio account to Red Tree Investment. Our goal is to try to lock in some of these higher rates for a longer term. With that said, after we've invested that $2 million, 83 to 84% of our resources will still be maturing within a year, less than a year. So we want to remain liquid because of projects coming and of grant opportunities where you have to match on those grant opportunities. So we cannot tie up money 3 to 5 years, 2 to 5 years at very much of our money. So 17% of our funds will mature after 2 years or 2 years or more, nothing greater than 5 years. So just wanted to update you on that. There is a now and then, or then and now resolution for a purchase order. We had Klaus Construction doing some work for us, and Eric, you articulated it far better than I explained what we were doing. Please.
So last year we had put in the budget an expansion of the garage on Fremont Street. Water and sewer maintenance crews. Project. And as we had started the designs on that, thank you. The building on 199 came open and at a very reasonable cost and was a much more effective use of the money because of how many different departments we can house there and how many of our vehicles and equipment we can get inside the building under roof. So, but we still need to go back and pay Klaus for the work that they did late in the year last year. And that was, bill came due.
Okay. Thank you. The other emergency ordinance is to appropriate dollars for the CHIP grant. So the CHIP program is a very good program. What it does is it helps lower income households to have access to dollars to reinvest in their home for repairs, maintenance. If somebody needs a new roof, new furnace, this program's there to assist them. We are the pass-through agent on that, and it runs on a two-year time span. So there was a 23 grant that was granted in 23 for $1,050,000. $525,000 was appropriated in '23. The second half of that grant has been approved and is now being appropriated for '24. That's what this resolution is doing. It's allowing us to begin to process, and we don't process them. The GLAP processes them, and they're in the process of already doing that, and we need to catch up with them. So we need to pass it on an emergency so that as those invoices come in, we have dollars available to pay it. Which is different than the ordinance. You see, there's also an ordinance that we're going to enter into an agreement with Seneca County and Tiffin. That's for the next CHIP grant for the next 2-year period. So it's 3 entities coming together to file for one grant. We share in the grant. Fostoria, we are the pass-through agent. So we pretty much handle all of the dollars that flow through that grant here in Fostoria.
So both of those need to pass an emergency, or
No.
just the?
Just the appropriation, the change in a permanent appropriation does.
Gotcha.
Does the then and now need to pass this
Yes.
evening? Okay. Anything else? All righty, we will move into the director, or into the public portion. I will recorrect, we have 2 people who have requested time to speak, so we will let them speak first. And then anybody else who wishes to speak to council will be allowed to speak after that. And the first person up this evening is Deb Tyson.
Thank you, Deb Tyson, 800 Woodward Avenue, Lot 9. I only want to say that I am impressed with how 2024 is going as far as how us as a city here is working together. And I did mention during the law and order part about volunteerism. I don't know whether we want to call it that or if somebody else has an idea, but my idea is instead of coming up here and the first time we ever mention something complaining, I started out with the landfill asking questions. And I think that's a good idea. But I think maybe 1 or 2 on one, whatever, about something that's in that manner. But if you go out in an area, whatever it is, and volunteer, but I don't know laws and regs that would allow that, because I know there's things you have to have permission for. So that's kind of why I put it in law and order. But I think we need to come up with something, because people can't all come here at this time, but when you volunteer, you do it at all different times, as long as there's daylight, obviously. But that would get more of the community involved. It would also let people tell their side of how they feel, what they'd like to see in Fostoria. Let's bring Fostoria together. That's my. And one last thing. I asked before the meeting, a couple of you, what was the date for Arcadia? I've got both the 26th and the 27th, no clarification, and that came from 4 different people here. So I don't know whether it's Tuesday or Wednesday at this point. That's the Zoning Board of Appeals continuation. But if anybody finds out, please let me know.
It's Tuesday. It was in the paper.
I don't get the paper, but thank you. Any questions for me?
Thank you. Joy Walters.
Joy Walters, 482 Hoover Drive. So I'm basically just here to make a couple comments about the landlord and tenant rights ordinance, proposed ordinance. Just as an average citizen reading through this, I've really spent some time combing through, like I said the last time. I'm just wondering if there isn't a way to rewrite this so that the actual Ohio Revised Code is separate from the city ordinance. Just because in reading through this, it's confusing to the average person to decipher what ordinance, we're pulling ordinances into, or Ohio Revised Code into the city ordinance. And it's just a lot of back and forth. And I know that it's really not that difficult once you kind of get there, but the average person going and looking at this, I feel is going to have a really hard time deciphering. And I guess that was my main point, is just the combining of the Ohio Revised Code into this proposed city ordinance and having it be more understandable to the average person. And it's very confusing to the reader. That was my main point. The other point was it speaks on third-party inspection required, which is part of the city ordinance. Words that are being used in this paragraph, to me, are very subjective. So it's kind of, I want to know who's the arbiter, who's deciding what's credible, who's deciding what constitute as constantly messy, eyesore to the neighborhood, and constant disrepair. Those to me are very subjective words, very confusing to the reader. So you really don't know where you stand. As a renter, I think you want to have information plus feel empowered. So if you do have issues, you can pull something up like this that's put together a little bit more easier to understand, and you have tools to use. So I guess that was my main two issues with this, or not issues, but observations. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we will open up to anybody else from the public that wishes to speak. Please sign in with your name and address for the record, and then you can do that after you speak if you'd like, and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes.
I signed in.
Thank you, Paul.
Paul Allison, 118.5 West Center Street, apartment 2. I'd like to speak about Georgie Whitmer, too, for a while. As some of you know, I was clerk of council. I sat up, well, I was actually on the other side, from 1986 to the end of 2005 as clerk of council. And during a large part of that time, Georgie was on council. And she was a very good council person, always prepared, and a very nice person. I didn't know her like Eric did in school or anything, because I grew up in Bowling Green and went through Bowling Green High School. But she was a wonderful person and a hard worker. I frankly didn't know that she was in ill health, but of course she's my age, so health sometimes doesn't always continue forever, unfortunately. I am speaking in the microphone fairly well, right? I hope. Everybody can hear me?
We'll tell you if you don't, Paul.
Okay, all right. The other thing I want to speak about, of course, is the ordinance regarding making the digital recording the minutes of council, the official minutes. I'm opposed to that. I'm still opposed to it. I don't think it makes good sense. I was thinking about it. I was also on the Civil Service Commission from 1980 through the end of 2005. And during that time, we had a police chief that was suspended several times and appeared before the commission several times. And we, of course, hired a court reporter for the transcript because the police chief was represented by counsel, but we also did minutes. You know, it was a regular meeting. We did minutes, and the court reporter did the transcript for us to make a decision, and we used it for our decision. And of course, it would be used if anybody appealed it, which they didn't, but they could have. And of course, we would have had to have a transcript for the court for that reason. So minutes are meant to be not everything. They're meant to be a summary. If you want to, and I hope we do a digital recording of council meeting minutes, I think it's a good idea. But that, in my opinion, that should be used. You should look at the minutes, and if you want more information, you should go to the audio recording. Now, I won't be going there because I don't have access right now. Maybe I'll get access in the future. But right now I don't, and it's not high on my priority list to get access, frankly. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I think we should continue the minutes the way they have been done. And again, as I said at the last council meeting, not everybody has access to digital and audio recordings, and they're not going to in the near future. As I said at the last council meeting, I was so surprised when I asked somebody about his cell phone. He said, "Well, I don't have a cell phone. I only have a landline." I was amazed. I said, "Even I have a cell phone. Even I have an email account. Of course, it's at the library, but I have one. I have a memory stick too, which I use. Oh, that's my handkerchief. But I have one, and I've used it for quite a long time. But the idea of making the digital audio recording the minutes of council is just not a good idea. It really isn't. And I would invite you to defeat that ordinance or do whatever you want with it, but it doesn't need to pass because it won't improve the way we do business or the way council does business. And that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allison.
Be careful, don't blow your nose in that memory stick, Paul.
Bill Sayre, 301 South Main Street. I did come to the last council meeting. I do agree with Paul on that. I don't understand why they couldn't have both middens and actual. You can digitize some of it, but if anything happens to all those digital records, then we're out of luck. So having both isn't a bad idea. The main thing I came to here to speak about was the rental registration. I know I came in the last week and told you all that we are in a housing crisis. I'm not sure if anyone looked up how or what area something like this has been implemented where increased housing, but you'll have a hard time finding it. I should probably apologize. I came in here 2 years ago and I've been pissed off at government for a long time. It's not specifically everyone in here. But the big thing is, we're supposed to be represented and we should be represented. When we did the rental registration prior, Mike Schaefer had put out a thing online, had almost 200 comments on it. Over 80% of them were saying this isn't a good idea. They said this is not a good idea. We actually had a public hearing on it in which this room was packed full. Again, you couldn't sit down. And I couldn't count how many people came up here. There wasn't, and tenants and landlords alike came up here and they were saying this isn't a good idea. It's much improved from what it was the prior time. It is. However, like Joy said, there's a lot of vagueness in there. Okay, and Mr. Manel could be the greatest man in the entire world. But what you guys have to think about is Mr. Manel's not going to be mayor forever. Okay, so you have to think about down the line. It's bad to say, but think of whoever's the worst person you can think of having that position, giving them that authority. Okay, it needs some level of clarity. There's a lot of vagueness in it to where it doesn't. It needs more clarity as far as the inspections, as far as I'm still uncertain how the zoning process works because it's never been truly clarified as far as who is complaining. And I know, and I've talked to zoning prior and I've talked to all the zoning people, and it's, if someone were to damage a property, I would have to file a police report. But if the grass is high, I don't know who complained. I'll take care of it. I've never had a problem working with zoning, and I will take care of it. But if there's going around making lists and my grass is high, but the next door neighbor's high, but I'm the only one getting flagged, I'm going to go, this doesn't make any sense. And that's been my biggest issue when it comes to zoning. My record outside of zoning, I don't have a record. I have a clean record. I've tried to make an honest living. I worked as a nurse for years, and now this is what I do for a living as well as being a dad. So it's just, we really have to look, and we gotta stop. You gotta ask your constituents. There's ways to do this to truly ask your constituents, not just, hey, you're talking to your neighbor. I'm talking, reach out. The city has a page now that you could reach out and say, is this a good idea? And ask, just ask. It's not gonna hurt anything. And Amy and Brian, and Mr. Cassidy, you guys were all here last year. You've seen what people said. I'm sad that Tom's not here because Tom's seen it too. But it's as far as, it needs more clarity. It needs more public input, and I don't think it has had that. I'm hoping we don't have just the strict yeses across the board with it, and I'm hoping someone will actually stand up and say, hey, maybe we should clarify this a little more, make it more easily to interpret. There's a lot of legalese in there, and it's majority of it's the Ohio Revised Code. It's already law. So, and not that people, and that information should be there. People should know what that is. But if we're mixing and there's a lot of vagueness as far as the city portion of it and the inspection portion of it, you're running into a situation where down the line it could cause issues. I think it personally will cause housing issues in some way, shape, or form that I don't, if you guys want to have a conversation, invite people who invest in this town. I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in this town. Invite people who've actually done it, speak to them, because there are ways that we could increase housing, make it safe, make it affordable for people. And affordability is a huge, huge issue. And if this passes, I don't see a way, shape, or form that it will not increase the cost of housing in town. So that's all I had to come here and say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, we will move into old business.
A resolution declaring the digital audio/video recording to be the official minutes of the council city of Fostoria meetings.
Discussion?
I'm right on the fence. I'm leaning towards digital. I know there's a lot of debate on it, obviously. In the best interest of both sides, in the best interest and fairness to Fostoria today, Fostoria tomorrow, do we want to table this for a couple more weeks and just kind of I'm not trying to bury my head or avoid dealing with the issue. But I want to make sure that when we do it right. Like a guy once said, you can't unring the bell. I'm just throwing out my thoughts on it. For what it's worth, I see benefits both ways. I really like the idea that having it digitalized, there's nothing left for interpretation. If somebody gets mouthy or out of hand in council, which now doesn't happen, but it exactly what they say and everything would be right there, wouldn't it? But seriously, I do. I really am looking at both sides of this. I'm really wanting to do something that when we do it, it's done right. It'll be good for this town for a long time.
On clarification of the law director, once we've just read this, are we able to table this? Okay.
I'd like to say that I have toiled over this. I think this recording that we're seeing on a regular basis now is phenomenal. Zach's done a great job. The mayor has done a great job on so many things in his first few months. But I can tell you as a school treasurer, I was responsible for those minutes. And over the course of my career, there were many times that I had to go back and search for something 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago. Even when we sold the Riley and Holmes property, I had to go back further than that. And it required going to minutes. I'm not going to go back and watch videos to find that information. And I would also add that when your minutes are PDF'd, you can do a quick search for a word and find the information that you're looking for. I won't be able to support this even if we table it. I think the recording is fabulous. I'm so glad that we're doing it. The transparency piece is, you can't put a price tag on it, what it's done for the community. But for the integrity of the record, I believe we're best keeping paper minutes and PDFing them.
Stephanie, I got a question. In an audit, do we have to have it in writing?
So I reached out and spoke with our accountants who do our audit, the accountants who do our cash to gap, and they presented me with a presentation from the auditor of state, and digital minutes are permitted. They are considered a form, of appropriate form.
With that in mind, even though they're okay and appropriate, when you have them come and do an audit, we get charged for that, correct?
Yes.
I'm not, I admit, I am not very good at watching a video and trying to find the information that I want to see. I get bored with the stuff I don't want to watch. And I would fall to the category of Sue and say, I think we need paper, getting it out on the website, and the website's phenomenal for the city now, and getting it out there and posted and, the next day is awesome. But somebody's going to have to sit there as an auditor that we're paying for then and watch all of the minutes if they're looking for something. Whereas if it was on paper in a PDF, they could find it within a couple minutes.
Well, that assumes that you don't index your video. You can index the video to know at what point resolution 2024-5 passed. So you don't have to go through the entire video. So the key is how are you going to implement those digital minutes? I don't have that solution.
Right.
But I do know you can index the minutes. And so it is similar to searching in a PDF. You're just going through the minutes and you're finding where those resolutions were passed that you're looking for, and there's an index that tells you go to 25-30. So 25 minutes in, 30 seconds. That's where that resolution was passed and discussed. So you don't have to watch an hour's worth of a council meeting to find your one resolution you're looking for. So it's a valid point, but I think there's ways around that. I don't want you to think that we're going to pay somebody to sit there and watch 20 hours of council meetings.
Well, then are we going to pay somebody to index it?
Again, I don't know how
Part of the ordinance?
I'm not here recommending one way or another. I'm just telling you what it is.
Indexed?
So to clarify that a little bit is that we do have a clerk still.
Right.
Clerk's job is to do whatever we've directed them to do based on making sure that there are minutes available. The second thing is that at the end of the day, this is your ordinance or resolution. And if you want to make sure that it's indexed, you can make sure that there's a provision in there to have it indexed. So,
well, it sounds obvious that we should have that done to it.
at this point, it would
And it's
require,
not in there.
it would require a motion from the floor, a second and a vote to amend the ordinance.
We kept written minutes, would we have to still index the video? No? Or, I mean, the amount of time it's gonna have somebody do the index, wouldn't it be just as easy as them putting the minutes in?
The only requirement is that the meeting has minutes. There's no requirement that anything is indexed. This is completely up to you guys. This, like President Shaver said, this is your guys' ordinance. You can make it say whatever you want.
Indexing the minutes is fairly easy. We had the roll call at 6:05. We had communications at 6:07, finance at 6:07. Director of Law at 6:13, Director of Finance at 6:15, Public at 6:19, Old Business began at 6:34.
Mr. Allison, the public portion's over.
I know.
So,
I,
sorry.
Mr. Allison, you have access to,
sorry to say that I completely disagree with ending the paper
Our
minutes.
council's having a discussion, Mr. Allison, and the public portion is over. I apologize, but I want to keep decorum the way it should be.
and Mr. Allison stated that he has an email access. If he has email access, he has access to the minutes. They're available through the computers at the library.
We're not having public I know, it's,
Mr. Mayor, was that from the last meeting that you had the indexing?
No, that's tonight.
He's explaining how it would be
Right.
done. And, yeah, I understand that.
On the other side of the coin, what's the probability that we're gonna have to do a major in-depth research project involving the minutes?
I think the law director can tell you that she quite often has to go back and find ordinances and when they were passed, and when we amend them, you have to have the original ordinance from which you're moving forward.
So what would be the difference between going through the minutes to find what you're looking for and going through the actual ordinances to find what you're looking for? So I'm assuming you keep that together somewhere as well.
We keep all of the old legislation, yes. That's all cataloged. It's difficult. If I don't know an approximate time frame for when an ordinance was passed, then I really don't even know where to begin looking. Sometimes that's in our online codified ordinances, sometimes it's not. Truthfully, I don't necessarily look at the minutes. I get it from either just my knowledge, if it has been passed, since I've been here. I search my own files. I search the previous law director's files. That's just been a little bit more conducive to me, just because I don't have a way of searching the current minutes. I don't have a way of typing in a keyword and finding where that was in the minutes or where it is in the codified ordinances, in the legislation itself. That's not necessarily the codified ordinances, if that makes any sense. So really, it's just kind of a crapshoot sometimes.
During your experience as law director, you've got several years.
5.
5.
Going in 5.
Do you recall any situation where you were faced with doing some research involving council minutes that involved an extensive amount of time, where you might have worked for a day or several days just trying to pinpoint some specific ordinances?
Looking at the minutes? No, never.
Okay.
I've never had to look at the minutes for it.
Because, like I say, I'm on the fence, but I'm also looking at the idea of, are we worrying about something that the probability really isn't going to be there, that it's going to be a big deal? I mean, are we maybe overthinking this whole thing?
As far as I'm concerned, it's not any concern of mine, the minutes. I think it's more of the accessibility to the public. I think that's where everyone's concern is. It's not my concern at all.
Now, I have another question. How often are you approached by members of the public for information on minutes
For minutes,
for the council?
I have received a number of public records requests for minutes.
I'm not talking about those.
Other than those, none.
Okay.
So an observation I'm having is we're having a pretty good discussion about this. And I don't know how long we've been discussing because I didn't write down the time at this point, but I'm curious to know if the minutes that council clerk would write would say, had 17-minute discussion about resolution number 2024 dash blank. Whereas the video, we could watch the actual discussion. So that's something to think about too, because most of the minutes that I would have written would have said lengthy discussion by council members on this topic, and that would be it. So, I mean, that's something to mull over and think about as well.
When I think that goes back to Mr. Allison's point that the one is a summation.
Yeah.
And then the other would be a reference that you would use for the detail.
Yeah, and I think there's some merit in that.
Yeah.
So, not that I should chime in too
No,
much,
there's
just
merit
break
for
ties.
both.
And it is okay to have both.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having both. It's
Both.
Just
your
only one
meeting.
can be
You guys get to decide how
That's
you
what we're
want.
deciding. What is the official minutes?
Yeah, I think the state only requires we have minutes.
Correct.
We get to decide how we want those minutes.
Yeah, that's what this legislation is for, the official minutes. It's not saying that if you choose not to pass this, that you can't still record, that you can't still have that. This is just what are the official minutes. So if you pass this, the official minutes will be that audio video recording.
But we can still have a written one that we can, yeah.
Yeah, you can direct the clerk to do whatever you want.
But the way this resolution is written, it's just the audio recording is the minutes.
The official.
It would negate a
official minutes.
written.
No, it wouldn't. No, it would not need to be changed. It would just, if you pass this as is, those are the official minutes. Period. If you still want written ones, you don't need an ordinance for that. You can just ask Tammy to continue doing what she's doing. And then we're also going to have the audio video as the official minutes. Meaning that always needs to be done and it always needs to be available. That makes sense.
And you'd still keep documents for, if it was written, you'd still have documents in your office that we can go back to, correct?
Yeah, I will
So
have
it's not the official,
the minutes.
the minutes.
So I don't keep the minutes in my office.
Okay.
Tammy keeps the minutes in her office. I have some old minutes in my office, but I don't keep the minutes.
Along those lines, though, if the written minutes aren't the official document, you would want to address in our records retention how long you'd want those unofficial minutes retained. Because official minutes are never disposed. They're permanent.
Correct.
So you just have to decide if it's going to be unofficial from a record retention standpoint, how long do you want those to remain?
Well, that's pretty easy, really. If you're talking about permanent records and something comes up for whatever reason and what other circumstances, there's no substitute for seeing and hearing it firsthand. Everything that was said, every detail. You're not leaving anything up to interpretation. So through this discussion, I'm okay with it.
So at this point, we've had a reading. We need to have some sort of motion from the body, or it will die from a lack of motion.
I'll move to adopt.
Second.
We have a motion to adopt by Hall, a second by Cassidy. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
No.
Kodak,
No.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza,
Yes.
Motion does carry. That becomes resolution number 2024-16. No, 16. Thank you. All right, moving to the next one.
May I, before we go to the next one?
Sure. It's your meeting.
We've officially accepted digital is the official minutes, right?
Correct.
I think at this juncture, I think we, if it's appropriate, have a discussion on having the clerk make sign of some type of written minutes for council.
Okay.
Put a time frame on it and see if we really need it or if we really could just dispense with it. Does that make sense?
And how long do we keep these minutes?
We don't,
Records.
you can
Like you
keep them
said.
or throw them away. Really, you can do anything you want with them. Make them available and just see how much you really need it for a month and review the situation. Does that make sense or?
I don't know if it's necessary to have the minutes to decipher whether or not we need the minutes. Like, without them, we'll know in a month or two whether or not.
To go that way. We decide that we're in dire need of something written copy, we can go back to it, revisit it. We'll keep it officially, obviously digital. But if the need arises where we have to have it in writing or feel a need, we can always adjust it
Well, the
as a
clerk-
backup.
The clerk would be the one that would transcribe those then into hard copy.
Correct.
I think she should keep doing it.
I agree.
Part of the job,
Right.
quote unquote, she was hired for anyway. And she's continued to do it, so I still think we should have hard copy, even though they're not official.
So clarification, this will go into effect 30 days from the time it's signed.
Yes.
So the process we've been using needs to continue for 2 more meetings. The second portion is that we need to make sure we're not muddying the waters, because after that 30-day period, these minutes that we're receiving in paper are not the ones you're approving.
Right.
They would be the video transcript, or the video of the meeting would be the actual minutes you're approving. And if we're getting a summary, that is not an official record and is not what you would be approving at the meeting.
Correct.
So just make sure, I wanted to clarify that. So, and if that's something that, and I think some heads can get together over here and try to figure out how to kind of itemize our agenda with the video so we understand where and what location that happened, which would be part of that official record then. Correct. So, but it ultimately would fall on whatever we decide as the clerks. We'll do it later, not now. So, but with that, any other discussion on this? And it may require some tweaking, and we might have to revisit this and bring up another, ordinance just to do things a little bit different than what we just passed tonight. So,
I'll just keep doing my job till y'all fire me.
Oh, we know you will.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
This in no way changes your job at all.
Excellent.
So,
I'm happy.
I mean, other than it's a video recording instead of transcribed or abbreviated minutes. So, and you need to do it anyhow, because if for some reason there's a technical issue, we need that backup.
Got it.
So don't worry, you're not getting off the hook that easy.
Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion on this before we move on? All right, next piece of business.
An ordinance authorizing supervisory personnel of the City of Fostoria, Ohio, to receive supplemental income for obtaining specific class certification as specified and required by the Ohio EPA to operate a municipal water treatment and/or wastewater treatment plant, repealing ordinance number 2008-1112. I'm sorry, 112.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Do we have a motion to adopt by Lehman, a second by Baker? Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Hodak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
And that becomes ordinance number 2024-17. Want to read the next one?
An ordinance enacting new chapter 1357 of the codified ordinances of the City of Fostoria, Ohio, entitled, mine says registration of,
Landlord and tenant rights.
right, yep.
I move that we table that for reasons that have been brought up by numerous people tonight in the public sector. And I feel very much the same way. Actually, I'd like to have the zoning inspector into a meeting where we could discuss this openly and how he feels about it and how this is going to fall mainly back on him to see if he's okay with the language that's in it, because I think it's very vague. It's not specific enough. What's constantly messy to downtown might not be constantly messy on some other part of town. So I move to table it.
We have a motion to table by Mr. Podak to have some time to talk about language and have the zoning inspector meet with council to discuss this. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
You have a second by Councilperson Mendoza, so we will be calling roll to determine whether we're tabling this legislation.
Lehman,
Yes.
Hodak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
This has been tabled. We will move into the next ordinance.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder for the 2024 street resurfacing program, including pavement removal, surface planning, tack coat, and surface course of certain streets in the city of Fostoria, Ohio, according to specifications to be on file in the office of said mayor and declaring an emergency to exist.
Motion to suspend the three reading rules.
That's
Three
that's
separate.
This is the third reading.
It's out of order at this time. It's already the third reading, so.
Withdraw my motion.
Motion to accept.
Second.
We have a motion by Baker, a second by Mendoza to adopt. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Kodak,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
That does pass. It's ordinance number 2024-18. Go to the next one.
Before Tammy reads the next one, I'd like to move to table the ordinance to amend the traffic control map.
Okay. That is in order at this time. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Mendoza, a second by Lehman to table the ordinance to amend the traffic control map. And would you call the roll, clerk, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Kodak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
This has been tabled. And the last piece of old business.
Do I have to read it?
No, it's tabled. It'll stay as the second reading then when we bring it off the table.
Okay. All right. An ordinance amending the downtown Fostoria DORA that was enacted on April 5th, 2022, ordinance 2022-17, to temporarily extend the DORA hours to include Sunday, April 7th and Monday, April 8th, 2024, from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. and declaring an emergency.
I'll move to suspend the 3 reading rule on 3 separate occasions.
Second.
Is that Baker?
No, go ahead.
Hall. Okay. All right, we have a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule by Mendoza, a second by Hall. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Podak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
The 3 reading rule has been suspended.
Move to adopt.
Second.
All right, we'll give that one to Baker. Made a motion, or a motion to adopt by Mendoza, a second by Baker. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Lehman,
Yes.
Podak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
That does pass as resolution number 2024-19. We will move into new business.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder for the conversion and resurfacing of the current Buckley Street tennis courts into a combination of pickleball courts and a tennis court in the city of Fostoria, Ohio, according to specifications to be on file in the office of said mayor and declaring an emergency to exist.
I'll move to suspend a 3 reading rule on 3 separate occasions.
Second.
We have a motion by Hall, a second by Baker to suspend the 3 reading rule. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Podak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
The 3 reading rule has been waived.
Move to adopt.
Second.
We have a motion by Hall, a second by Lehman to adopt. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Podak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
That does pass. It is ordinance number 2024-20. Next one.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder for the Fostoria Splash Pad, ADA restrooms, and pump house to be located at 524 River Street in the city of Fostoria, Ohio, also known as City Park, according to specifications to be on file in the office of said mayor and declaring an emergency to exist.
Move to suspend the 3 reading rule.
Second.
We have a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule by Podak, a second by Cassidy. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Podak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
The 3 reading rule has been waived.
Move to adopt.
Second.
We have a motion by Cassidy, a second by Baker to adopt. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Podak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
That does pass. It's ordinance number 2024-21. Next page.
A resolution authorizing, empowering, and directing the Director of Public Service and Safety, acting as agent of the City of Fostoria, to execute and deliver to the Seneca County Land Reutilization Corporation all necessary instruments to effect a good and sufficient conveyance of parcel or parcels of land from the City of Fostoria to the Seneca County Land Reutilization Corporation in the vicinity of 161 Sandusky Street.
Just on clarification, that's the second to last ordinance on the new business. And that is the first reading of that ordinance. Might be a little mixed up in there.
Yeah, somehow.
Go ahead, read the next one.
A resolution to authorize participation in the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, road salt contracts awarded in 2024.
That is the first reading of that ordinance. Next one.
A resolution approving and ratifying the prior acts of the department heads and safety service director and approving then and now certificates for said expenditures and declaring an emergency.
Move to suspend the three reading rule on three separate occasions.
Second.
We have a motion by Lehman, a second by Cassidy to suspend the three reading rule. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Podak,
This is the 13,000? Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
The three reading rule has been waived.
Move to adopt.
Second.
We have a motion by Cassidy, a second by Baker to adopt. Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Podak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
That carries. That becomes resolution number 2024-22. Next one.
An ordinance accepting the recommendations of the Tax Incentive Review Council and declaring an emergency to exist.
Move to suspend the three reading rule on three separate occasions.
Second.
We have a motion by Cassidy, a second by Hall to suspend the three reading rule on three separate occasions. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Podak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
The three reading rule has been waived.
Move to adopt.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Cassidy, a second by Lehman to adopt. Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Podak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
Does carry. It's ordinance number 2024-23. Next.
A resolution to authorize, direct, and empower the mayor on behalf of the city of Fostoria, Ohio, to enter into a joint cooperating agreement between Seneca County, the city of Tiffin, and the city of Fostoria for the fiscal year 2024 Community Housing Impact and Preservation, CHIP program, for the purpose of addressing local housing needs and declaring an emergency to exist.
That is the first reading of that resolution. Next.
An ordinance to repeal Chapter 153 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Fostoria entitled Park and Recreation Board.
That is the first reading of that ordinance.
An ordinance adopting and amending ordinance number 2023-66, permanent 2024 appropriations by decreasing appropriations and appropriating from unappropriated funds in the CHIP 2023 fund and declaring an emergency.
Move to suspend the three reading rule on three separate occasions.
Second.
We have a motion by Lehman, a second by Baker to suspend the three reading rule on three separate occasions. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Podak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
The three reading rule has been waived.
Move to adopt.
Second.
We have a motion by Lehman, a second by Podak to adopt. Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Podak,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
That ordinance does pass. It's 2024-24. And the last piece of new business?
Authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder for the construction of a new airport terminal building at Fostoria Metropolitan Airport in the city of Fostoria, Ohio, according to specifications to be on file in the office of said mayor and declaring an emergency to exist.
That was the first reading of that ordinance.
Can we discuss that?
Sure.
Is that, there's insurance money there for that?
No, that'll be grant money primarily.
Okay. The other one burnt down. It was insured, right?
It was rebuilt though. So that was just, turned out to be a hangar building.
Okay.
The terminal building itself was never damaged, unfortunately, and stood there, from its lovely seventies form. And so that encroaches on the runway, so the idea is to build a new terminal building to match up with the new, building that we just built to replace it. And have a modern terminal for pilots when they come to the airport.
With fuel, right?
The fuel is another thing we're still working on, getting that up and running, but yeah, that is all part of the bigger picture.
There was expressed a desire to go into executive session with no business to follow. If someone would like to make a motion.
Okay. Miscellaneous.
We'll do miscellaneous first if we go into executive session. But that's up to you guys.
Fine.
I'll move to go into executive session to discuss confidential business information of an applicant for economic development assistance.
Second.
We have a motion by Mendoza, a second by Baker to go into executive session for confidential business of an applicant for economic development. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Hodak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
And we will go ahead and go into executive session after we do miscellaneous business, because there will be no business to follow. So we would like to start, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. President, I would like to appoint Greg Cassidy to the Fostoria Financial Oversight Committee.
Thank you. Any other miscellaneous business? All right, we will go into executive session. Again, there will be no business to follow. It is 7:14.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Would you hold a vote on that, please?
Okay, I didn't know if we needed.
Needs to be approved by council.
Perfect.
I'm sorry.
All right, so we do need a motion to appoint Greg Cassidy to that committee.
I move.
All right,
Second.
my apologies. Mr. Podak made a motion to appoint Greg Cassidy, seconded by Lehman. Clerk, would you call the roll?
Lehman,
Yes.
Hodak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Abstain.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
All right, that does carry. Greg, you are now on the committee. All right, Mr. Mayor. And it is now 7:15, and we will go into executive session again with no business to follow.
Oh my God, this is the longest meeting ever.
All right, we do have a motion to come out of executive session by Hall, a second by Cassidy. We do need to wait for everybody else to get in here, though. So, all right, we are all as council back in this room. We had a motion by Hall, a second by Cassidy to come out of executive session. Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Lehman,
Yes.
Hodak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Hall, Mendoza.
We are out of executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
First by Cassidy, second by Mendoza. Call the roll, please.
Lehman,
Yes.
Hodak,
Yes.
Cassidy,
Yes.
Baker, Hall, Mendoza. What time is it, please?
Adjourn at 7:30.